Hi, it's Glenn Depke from Depke Wellness, and welcome to our next segment in really the understanding of menopause and living into the one true symptom of menopause, which is simply the lack of your monthly cycle. So our last segment, we were talking about the importance of adrenal gland function, which is your stress hormone system, as you go through the transition where your ovaries are no longer producing that same level of estrogen and progesterone. So today we begin the discussion about adrenals, and what I really want to really make an impact on today is the different stages of adrenal function or dysfunction that you're potentially dealing with today. So I put together this graph that would actually help give you a visual to understand potentially what level your adrenals may be functioning at or maybe not functioning at, to be honest with you. So when we look at this graph, this green line that I have drawn on here represents the hormone cortisol. Now, cortisol is your primary stress response hormone. Now, this is whether your stress is mental, emotional, or due to infection, or inflammation, or injury, or toxicity, or food sensitivity, or the standard American diet. Whatever reason is driving the adrenal expression from a stress perspective. Now, how this should be working in your body is where it says optimal here. And you can see that we've got lines going across here, and these dashed lines represent what I would consider the optimal levels of cortisol production. Now, that's what would be happening when everything is working properly with your stress hormone system known as your adrenal glands. You would actually bounce back and forth based on levels of stress you would be experiencing through your day, but you would never go too high or too low, and you would maintain optimal body function, which we're going to get into in tomorrow's segment. But what happens though is when you're going through high levels of stress, and again, any of the levels of stress that I mentioned earlier, you're going to basically peak your cortisol production. Now, the challenge with that is that when you live with high cortisol, basically it has a lot of negative impacts on your body. It will accelerate the aging process, it'll weaken your immune system, and have really a multiple of negative impacts. And if we think about this, the elevated cortisol, the way your body has been designed is that's that fight or flight response. That's when, if we go back many generations, that's when the saber-toothed tiger would attack you. And you want that stress response to give yourself the best opportunity to save your life, to run away or to fight through that danger. But the way our mind works is that we're still having that same response of the saber-toothed tiger, but because of our mind, that so-called life or death situation could be traffic on the interstate. It might be being late to an appointment. It might be an argument with a spouse, or challenges with children, or issues with your boss, or a coworker, or bills in the mail you can't pay for, or any number of those stress responses that we have. So what's happening is most people are living a good portion, if not most of their life, in this response like the saber-toothed tiger is attacking you. So that will elevate your cortisol. Now, the tricky thing here is you may be able to notice it on the video, or it might not be clear enough, but most of this line is solid, but up at the peak of this, it's a dashed line. So the area of the dashed line is a time frame in your life is when you begin to burn out something known as your HPA axis. Now, I don't want to be overly technical, so I'll just say this really quick. The HPA axis stands for your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis, and the basic simplistic job of this is to bring your body back into a state of function and balance after a stressful event, situation, or time frame in your life. So obviously that's something that's very important, and it's a part of what we would refer to as your coping mechanism. I'd be willing to bet that right now you could think back to 5 years ago when you had a certain level of stress, you would still be able to deal with it with relative ease, but that same level of stress might push you over the edge right now. And that's a sign that you've actually burnt out this HPA axis and have basically, that coping mechanism is virtually destroyed at this point. So what that does is that begins to plummet, starts to create the lack of vitality in your adrenals, and it pushes you into a stage 2 adrenal insufficiency where the cortisol levels start to become depleted And while your total cortisol might seem to be okay, you're going to start in stage 2, you're going to have times of the day where you don't have enough cortisol for normal body function. And remember, we're going to get into that tomorrow. And then in stage 3 is basically when the bottom falls out on this whole system. In stage 3, not only do you have a lack of vitality with your adrenals overall throughout the day, it's also going to start to generally affect other secondary hormones, such as hormones like progesterone, testosterone, and different estrogen hormones. And that's when you start to recognize the other symptoms of menopause that are, again, as you've heard me say in previous videos, and if you haven't watched those videos, make sure you go back and watch all of the videos in this segment. But remember, if you're suffering with hot flashes, moodiness, weight gain, sleeplessness, and the list goes on of these different symptoms you may think are menopause, it's not menopause. It's going through menopause in an adrenal insufficiency, and your adrenals are no longer able to maintain the proper level of estrogen and progesterone you need. And in future segments, you're also going to learn that giving yourself progesterone and estrogen is not really the answer either, because the answer really lies in bringing balance into your adrenals. And so with that said, please be sure, so you can continue your education on menopause and how to really escape these symptoms for yourself, make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you haven't watched the previous videos in this series, please go back and view these to really begin your education at the most basic level working forward. And I look forward to tomorrow's video when we're going to discuss the overall holistic impact that your stress hormone system, your adrenal glands, has on the entirety of your body and your life. So I'm Glenn Depke from Depke Wellness, and thank you so much for your time.